Hey everybody, Ash and Sybe here for the Triple S League, and we're doing another special stats guide for Fallout 76. This time we're focusing on agility, and we are using the Nukes and Dragons character build planner to take a look at this here. This is a great little tool you can use to help plan your Fallout 76 build and sort of see what's coming and plan things out, because you kind of build your character as you go. So you can use this to help plan what you're going to do. And we're going to look at the agility skill tree here.
This is one of my favorite trees, and this is something that I'm going to be heavily investing in.
We should mention right off the top that the number of points you put into agility directly affects the number of action points that you have.
You start with a baseline of about 105 action points, and you can have as many as 245. That's a ton of action points, and that's a ton of regen as well if you kind of build yourself right. If you have Lone Wanderer, and if you have some of the other abilities that increase AP regen rate, and you take Action Boy and Action Boy Girl, then you're going to be able to be regenning super fast. Highly recommend this tree. Highly recommend putting at least 6 points in it. The best one is probably the Action Point Regenerator, because this is really going to affect what you can do in VATS, but it's also going to affect how much you can sprint and how fast you can sprint, and a couple other things. So Action Boy, definitely a good pick. Born Survivor is a great card. Still one of my top picks. I do not level it up though. I keep it at rank 1. Every time that I get down to 20%, I get an immediate instant stim pack, and it's pretty handy. There's a lot of cases where you just tap it, or you can set up a shortcut for it. But if you're in the middle of an animation, like reloading, or if you're falling, or if you're recovering from a knockdown, you cannot activate your quick slot button. This card immediately activates that stim pack. You don't have to press the button, you don't have to go through the animation, whereas you do if you're relying on a hot button. This thing has saved my life so many times already, and having it at rank 1 seems to be the best, because I don't find that my character's overusing stim packs. It's basically just to save your life kind of thing. This tree is also mostly focused on pistols, both automatic and not automatic pistols. We don't know if this affects pistol energy weapons, so this is something to kind of keep in mind. Right now, pistols are pretty good. You definitely get some black powder pistols that are really high damage. There's also, for shotgunners, there's an Enforcer, which is going to increase your chance to stagger enemies with the shotgun. You're also going to have the ability to cripple limbs with the shotgun. 30% chance to cripple limbs. If you're going to shotgunner build, this is a must-have card for sure. So back to the top here, we have Through Hiker, which is going to reduce the weight of food and drink by 90% at top rank, 30% at the first rank. This is really handy to have. There's a lot of food and drinks that weigh a lot, but again, not something you're going to have end game, something that you just pick up early on to make leveling probably a little bit easier and a little bit handier. You also have Dead Man Sprinting, which is going to increase sprint speed by 20%, so you're moving faster, but it's only going to come into play when you're below a certain health level, 40 and 50, respective of the points that you put in. Packing Light, again, this is really handy at low levels. If you grab this, if you're walking around and grabbing like every single pipe pistol and 10mm that every Scorched has on them, this is really handy to have. But again, late game, you're going to swap it out for something else. Marathoner is going to consume up to 40% fewer action points. If you're just utilizing the AP system for sprinting, then this is definitely a really solid card to pick up. If you're not into VATS, definitely look at picking this up, because this is going to let you, especially if you're a high endurance character, this is going to be able to let you sprint whenever you want, all the time. And if you're not using VATS, it's pretty handy to have. Ninja, one of my favorite cards. This is going to increase sneak attack damage. There's also a covert operative, which does the same for ranged weapons. Melee, you can boost the melee up to 3 times normal damage, whereas for covert operative, you're only going to be able to boost it to 2.5 damage. This is still huge, and this is still doing a metric ton of damage when you're sneaking around. If you're into a sneak build and you're capping out your agility at 15, you're picking up all the sneak perks, then this is definitely a must-have card for either ninja or covert operative, depending on if you're melee or ranged, of course. Evasive is a must-have card if you're maxing out your agility. This gives you up to 45 energy and damage resistance. Does not allow it to be used in power armor though, so if you're going for a no power armor build, this is a solid and a must-have card to have if you're maxing out agility. Speaking of sneaking, you've got sneak here, which is going to make it so it's you're 75% harder to detect while sneaking. This is huge. We don't know how the sneaking system affects player versus player stuff, but one thing that we can confirm is that this is really strong when you're dealing with the PvE world. You will be able to basically go through a base and silently take out pretty much everybody in the base, just like you can do in Skyrim and Fallout 4, by basically just being the shadow. And this card is definitely pivotal to having it. Maxing this out is a must if you're going for a sneak route. Home defense is this is kind of interesting. You can craft and also disarm traps. You may have noticed that when you find a trap in the game, if you don't have this perk, when you go up to it, all you can do is just activate it. Activating the trap and making the trap go off, which is, if it's like dropping a pile of grenades, not necessarily recommended. But it's also interesting that you're going to be able to craft some more of these as well as extra turrets. So this is definitely something that you'll want to max out eventually. It's not something that you need to have on you all the time. You've got goat legs at 32. Goat legs is going to increase the or decrease the amount of damage you take from falling. If you're in power armor, you don't need this at all. If you're not in power armor, then this might be something that you're interested in taking, but for the most part doesn't seem that necessary. Ammo smith, you're going to be able to, if you're crafting ammo at your work base, take this card at some point. It's a good crafting card to have. You're going to be able to craft up to 80% more ammo than you would normally craft. Next card is one of my favorite as well. Again, in PvE, this is going to allow you to completely just become a total ninja and a total shadow. If you sneak, you lose enemies, and running no longer affects your stealth. So you're going to be able to like run through a level, silently taking out mobs constantly. Every time they see you, you just crouch and you lose them if you're far enough away. And so far, this is really, really overpowered. Mr. Sandman at the next level here, this is insanely overpowered. At night, your silenced weapons do an additional 50% sneak damage. Only happens at night though, so here we have light-footed. Again, we're not necessarily certain if this is going to make it into the game. We're pretty sure it's going to make it into the game, but right now this is going to remove you from triggering mines and floor-based traps. So this is really, really handy to have. Highly suggest that you take it. This is going to let you basically be able to ignore most of the mines and most of the traps that both enemy players and the environment are setting out for you. So 1 point. If you're really low in agility or if you're specializing in sneaking, then this is definitely a must-have. At 39, we have White Knight. This reduces your armor breaking by up to 90%. I don't think this affects power armor, but again, this might be something to keep your eye on. Especially, it's going to be especially useful when you're repairing your armor, so keep that in mind as well. Dodgy is another card here where, again, we've talked about this a couple of times. You avoid 30% of incoming damage up to, from 10 to 30, at a cost of 30 action points. Which, again, if you're talking about a mini nuke, or if you're talking about a sniper attack, this is pretty handy to have. But if you're talking about a minigun, or an automatic weapon of some kind, then this may just end up draining your AP instantly and offering you little to no damage reduction. So not sure what to think about with this one. So at 47 we have Secret Agent, which makes Stealth Boys last twice to 3 to 4 times as long. This is a pretty decent card to have if you're utilizing Stealth Boys. Obviously it's going to be quite handy, but from what I've seen in the game so far, you don't need Stealth Boys to be really good at stealth, especially once you get Sneak and Escape Artist and all this stuff down pat. This kind of seems like a bit of a pointless card, but it also might be really, really strong in PvP, because while the enemy mobs don't necessarily see you when you sneak, I think enemy players can still physically see you. So that's something that you might be able to alleviate by becoming Predator. All right, next thing we have here is Adrenaline. This is a really good card to have at level 1. I do not recommend maxing this out because it seems, at the moment, this is 5 points. 5 points to sink into this thing. And the difference between rank 1, capping at 36% bonus damage, versus rank 5, which only gives you 24% more damage. It's up to you, but basically, like, I think having this at a 1 point card is probably the best thing that you can have with this, and is definitely an easy card to pick up. And then finally we have Gung Fu, which got turned into a really, really interesting card. So this is going to allow your VATS to swap automatically to the next target if you kill your current VATS target in VATS. So in VATS, if you activate it, you instantly kill one target, it's going to swap to your next target, and it's going to do 10% more damage to that next target. If you rank this all the way up, that's going to increase up to a bonus of 30% damage. So that means that if you enter a room and there's 4 mobs there, you're going to be able to VATS kill 1, 2, 3, 4 of them basically instantaneously. But I'm not convinced that this is a great card. It's an interesting card, but if that's all it's doing, this may or may not necessarily be a great card, because you can also just hit V and hit fire again too. So this is kind of hit the VATS button or not hitting the VATS button. This is really interesting. We'll definitely be watching how this affects endgame play, but as of right now, I'm not going to advise that you try and get this and cap this out. I advise like waiting until somebody can do some tests on it. But that's the agility tree. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. If you're into sneaking, if you're into stealth, if you're into stealthy gameplay, if you're into pistols, this is definitely your tree. If you're into action points and VATS, this is definitely your tree. If you're not into VATS and you're not into stealth at all, then having at least a few points in this can't hurt you, and is definitely going to give you some baseline bonuses to sprinting and stuff like that. And I think pretty much everybody is going to be utilizing sprinting. So having at least 4 points in this tree is advisable. And if you're going into kind of a stealth play, then you want to max this tree out. You want to have 15 points in this, and then you want to see if you can boost it even more past that.
All right, so that's the agility tree. Thank you so much for watching. Definitely hit that like button if you appreciated this guide, and definitely hit that sub button to catch all of our other Fallout 76 content that's coming. We have 6 other guides on all of the 6 other special stats, so definitely check those out, and we will talk to you later. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, sub, and hit that notification bell, and then check out some of these other videos. Find the link to our Discord server and other important stuff in the description below.
Protect and serve. And serve. What?